Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 24, Text 18. Esha manavite garbham pravishtaha kaitavadanaha avidya samshaya granthim chitva gam vicharishyati. Esha manavite garbham pravishtaha kaitavadanaha avidya samshaya granthim chitva gam vicharishyati. Esha manavi te garbham pravishta kaitavadhanah avidya samshaya granthim chitva gam vicharishyati. Translation. Lord Brahma then told Devahuti, "My dear daughter of Manu, the same Supreme Personality of Godhead who killed the demon Kaitava is now within your womb. He will cut off all the knots of your ignorance and doubt. Then he will travel all over the world." Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Here the word avidya is very significant. Avidya means forgetfulness of one's identity. Every one of us is a spirit soul, but we have forgotten. We think, I am this body. This is called avidya. Samshaya granthi means doubtfulness. The knot of doubtfulness is tied when the soul identifies with the material world. That knot is also called ahankara, the junction of matter and spirit. By proper knowledge received from the scriptures in disciplic succession, and by proper application of that knowledge, one can free himself from this binding combination of matter and spirit. Brahma assures Devahuti that her son will enlighten her, and after enlightening her, he will travel all over the world, distributing the system of Sankhya philosophy. The word samshaya means doubtful knowledge. Speculative and pseudo-yogic knowledge is all doubtful. At the present moment, the so-called yoga system is prosecuted on the understanding that by agitation of the different stations of the bodily construction, one can find that he is God. The mental speculators think similarly, but they're all doubtful. Real knowledge is expounded in Bhagavad Gita. Just become Krishna conscious. Just worship Krishna and become a devotee of Krishna. That is real knowledge. And anyone who follows that system becomes perfect without a doubt. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Namaom Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I welcome you all to the third session on the topic Devahuti. Thank you all for taking out your valuable time and giving each other this valuable association. And we shall start now with a quick recap of what we have done last two sessions. So last two sessions, basically we learned about how Devahuti, she was a princess. She was daughter of the Emperor Kadama Muni, and how Kadama Muni has handed over his darling daughter in marriage to Kadama Muni. I mean, Manu has handed over his daughter to Kadama Muni in marriage. And later in the last week, we have learnt about how Devahuti has served her husband Kadama Muni in such a wonderful way. We have learnt about all the various aspects of the mood of devotional service in which she served, thereby pleasing her glorious husband. So, and we also have learned about how Kadama Muni, being pleased with her, has bestowed so much of good fortune. He has given her a lot of spiritual blessings. He's given her the graces of God. And not just that, he has given her all the material opulences that anybody could dream of. The big aerial mansion. We also spoke about how she went into Bindu Sarovar, and it was like a great spa, and 1,000 Gandharva girls to attend to her. And it was a grand pleasure trip, not just all over the world, it was all over the universe, in all the 8 directions to different planets they went, and had an amazing pleasure trip and got back, and they had 8 beautiful daughters. So we will continue from there today. Yes. So basically, this chapter in Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, this is the 23rd chapter. Do you know what is the title of this chapter? The title of this chapter is Devahuti's Lamentation. Lamentation means it's like brooding over, crying over something. We've just heard about how she has had such great enjoyment by traveling all over the universe. And why is the chapter entitled Devahuti's Lamentation? Let's see. So we have spoken about last time how Devahuti has acquired great fortune. And with that fortune, was she really happy? See, initially she had received a lot of spiritual gifts. She was satisfied by that. But after receiving all these great material gifts, was she really happy? The answer is no. She was, in fact, like Kadama Muni, after having the 9 daughters, he was about to leave to the forest. And at that time, she was crying. And she spoke to him and she told him, my dear husband, I have, the material energy has really cheated me. I'm feeling so cheated. Your association is so great, but I have utilized this association for material happiness. So I'm not at all happy. In fact, I'm frustrated. So this is the nature of material happiness. So today we will just start our session with how this material happiness is different from spiritual happiness. Because last week what we have seen is it is the zenith of the material happiness anybody could receive. The kind of holiday, the kind of opulence, the aerial mansion, flying all over the universe and getting such amazing dresses to wear, ornaments to keep, and whatever a girl can dream, all that was fulfilled. But yet, Devahuti was in a mood of lamentation. That's the nature of material happiness. What is material happiness? What is its nature? I'll give a small example. Can you all see this slide? What is this? This is very familiar, right? It's the sugar cane. The sugar cane, when you put it in the machine, you get some juice out of it. And you again put it again you get a lot of juice, little juice. And 3rd time, 4th time, 5th time, and what's left is just pulp. But still the person puts it again and some drops are just coming out. This is generally, I think software professionals will relate to this very well. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. By the time Friday comes, there'll be something like this pulp, totally gisified. And with all that, whatever juice they get, they think they will enjoy on Saturday and Sunday, but within no time, that's over. So Prahlad Maharaj gives a wonderful description about the nature of this material happiness, and that comes from sense enjoyment. It says in this beautiful verse, Matirna Krishne Paratasvatova Mitho Bipadyeta Griha Vratanam Adanta Gobe Samitam Tamishram Punah Punascharvita Charvananam. I think we've heard this verse a lot of time. Punah punah charvita charvananam. That means chewing what has been already chewed. Like this sugarcane juice. Sugarcane pulp. You're trying to extract 2 drops of juice after repeatedly putting it into the grinder. So Adanta Gobhir, with uncontrolled senses, when a person is trying to enjoy this material world, it is like chewing what has been already chewed. And what is the result of it? The result of it is dissatisfaction. On the other hand, let us see what is the nature of spiritual happiness. There's a great saint, Srila Rupa Goswami, who has lived about 500 years ago. And he describes about the ecstasy that he feels when he enjoys spiritual bliss, what he feels and what happens to his senses. He explains that in a beautiful verse. He says, Tunde tandavini vitanute tundavali labhyate karna krodha kadambini ghatayate karna bhudepya spriham Cheta prangana sangini vijayate sarvendriyanam kritam no jane janati kriyat piramritai krishneti varnadvai. The 2 syllables Krishna, the kind of amount of nectar they produce, I cannot explain what it is like. The kind of ecstasy they produce when that Krishna dances on my tongue. I want millions and millions of tongues, Tundavali, millions of tongues. And when that same Krishna, the holy name of Krishna, enters into my ears, I want thousands and thousands of ears. And when this same holy name of Krishna enters the courtyard of my heart, Cheta Prangana, what happens when it enters the courtyard of my heart? All my senses are conquered. Sarvendriyanam kritam. It is like they're all totally conquered. So this is exactly the difference between material happiness and spiritual happiness. Material happiness, the senses they want more and more, and they're like shameless. How much ever you give, they want more. In the sense, more in the sense of being in a very dissatisfied way. They're asking in a shameless manner. But then the spiritual happiness, you really want more of the senses, but in a very satisfied way. The bliss is just ever increasing. You cannot compare it. And it's so ever increasing that it's called like it's a shoreless ocean, that is ever expanding shoreless ocean. So that's the nature of spiritual bliss. So this is just the comparative chart of the comparative pictures of material happiness and spiritual happiness. What they give and what they do to the senses. In the first case, the senses are unsatisfied, dissatisfied, frustrated. In the second case, the senses are totally conquered and there is only experience of bliss. So this was exactly the state that Devahuti was in. She was in a state of lamentation when her husband was leaving. And she regrets that this illusory energy has cheated me and I'm not happy. And now that you're leaving, I'm feeling very fearful. This is again another nature of material enjoyment. It leaves you fearful. And she says that, but my dear Lord, that indirectly she says, I want like they say, son is the representative of the father. So I'm eagerly awaiting for a son who will come to break all these knots that have been formed in my heart because of material enjoyment. In other words, she says, I'm desiring a son who will come and free me from all these material bondage. So Kardama Muni, he remembers, if you remember in the first session, we discussed that when the Supreme Lord appears to Kardama Muni, he says that I will personally, a portion of me will personally descend in the womb of your dear wife Devahuti, and I will come to disseminate the knowledge of Sankhya. So he says, do not worry, my dear Devahuti, you are very chaste, you are austere, you're self-controlled, you have all the virtues of a great lady. Do not worry, within a very short time, the Supreme Lord is going to descend as his son. So from then on, Devahuti performs amazing austerity, she performs a lot of devotional service, and soon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he enters her womb. And when he enters her womb, all auspicious signs appear around the environment in the universe, and Lord Brahma himself descends from Satyaloka on his Hamsa, the swan carrier. He comes along with all the 9 sages, who are his sons. He comes with the 4 Kumaras, and he comes also along with Narada. He comes, and knowing that the Supreme Personality is in the womb of Devahuti, and he offers wonderful prayers to the Supreme Personality. And then he turns to Kardama Muni and he congratulates him. My dear Kardama Muni, you are such an amazing son. You have fulfilled the purpose. I have given you this instruction to go and beget children, and you have really taken that order so wonderfully well, that you have, by your devotion, you have literally invited the Supreme Lord as your son. And I'm very, very pleased with you. And he turns to Devahuti and she says that none other than the verse that we began our class with, none other than the Supreme Lord himself, who is the destroyer of the demon Kaitaba, is in your womb right now. The Kaitaba actually represents ignorance. There's this pastime of Madhu and Kaitaba who steal away the Vedas, and Lord appears in the incarnation of Hayagriva to bring back the Vedas. So this Madhu and Kaitaba represent ignorance. So he said, the killer of Kaitaba, he is in your womb. Soon he will come and he will give you the transcendental knowledge by which you will be totally freed of all these material anxieties and entanglements, and he will show you the path to perfection. He says that, and he looks at Kadama Muni and he says that, my dear Kadama, you can get all your 9 daughters married as per their temperaments and likings to all these 9 rishis. He says that, and he gets on his Hamsa carrier and he leaves to Satyaloka or Brahmaloka. So all these 9 rishis get married to the 9 daughters and they leave. And soon Kapila Dev, who's the disseminator of Sankhya philosophy, he appears. So when he appears, Kadama Muni is very, very obviously, he's so fortunate. This very same Supreme Personality whom you're praying for day in and day out, whom you're worshipping, he has descended as your own son in your own house. We don't know what it feels like, but it is certainly a greatest fortune. So Kadama Muni approaches Kapila Dev when he's in a secluded place, and he begins to offer beautiful, beautiful prayers, telling, my dear Lord, that you're the very same person whom the yogis, after meditating for millions and millions of birth, they get the darshan of your lotus feet. The very same personality who actually disentangles people from bondage and gives liberation. And you're that very sweet person who's the object of everybody's devotion and heart. And you have so kindly descended at our place. And this is the greatest fortune. It's the unusual blessings of all the devatas. And for a simple, ordinary householder like me, for this favor of yours is immeasurable. And he says, he offers very beautiful prayers and pleases the Lord. And he says, now please allow me. I will walk towards the jungles in taking my next ashram, sannyas ashram, and I will leave the home and roam about as mendicant, and I will begin meditating upon you within my own heart. Please, I want to free myself of this family attachments. So Prabhupada writes a beautiful purport here that even though the Supreme Personality of God himself has appeared in his house, he still executes his the Varnashrama duties and he moves to the next phase, but keeping his purpose very clear, that is to meditate upon the Supreme Lord. Meditation on the Supreme Lord, it's the Yuga Dharma of Satya Yuga. So Lord Kapila is very pleased, and as he starts speaking to his father, my dear father, as I have promised you, I have come to you as your son, and do not worry about mother. I have come with the purpose of giving Sankhya philosophy to all the people in general, and also I will take care of mother, and I will give her this knowledge and relieve her of uh, the kind of bondage that she is experiencing in her heart. So this is the true son. And when he said these words, he's actually doing his duty of relieving his father of the anxiety of his wife, of his mother. So it's a very beautiful conversation how it happens. And then he says, now you may go and execute your devotional life with your single pointed focus. You can meditate on me and attain the path to liberation. So Kadava Muni leaves home. Yeah, this is the marriage. This is where Kadava Muni leaves home after taking instructions from his son. And he goes into the jungle and spends the remaining time meditating and attaining the perfection of life. So what happens next? So what happens next is Devahuti is again like she's alone, and one day she's passing by. Like one day, I mean, Kapila Dev is sitting on the bank of the Bindu River, and he's in his own meditation. So Devahuti approaches her son Kapila Dev in a very humble way. She approaches him and tells that, my dear son, I have heard from Lord Brahma that you would come and to enlighten me and rid me of all my material bondages in this world. So kindly enlighten me. That's how she approaches him. So this is what we see in the life of Devahuti all through, actually. This is one common mood that I have observed that we can see is that right from the beginning of her life, she always reposed her faith in the words of great personalities, and she waited patiently. In the beginning, she heard from Narada Muni about the glories of Kardama Muni. She fixed her mind on him and she waited patiently for the right time. And then, so here also we see a combination of faith and patience. Again, later on in life, she hears from Kardama Muni that our union will produce wonderful children. And so she served him patiently. She kept the faith in those words, and she waited patiently until the right time comes. And when Kardama Muni was about to leave, she again asks him for the same. Again, here we see that she hears from Brahmadev that the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is in your womb, he will enlighten you about Sankhya. He will come and enlighten you. So again, she hears this with faith and she patiently waits till the right time. So this is actually, a magical equation in our spiritual life. To have that unflinching faith in the words of great souls, of our spiritual master, of Srila Prabhupada, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, whatever they speak, when we have that unflinching faith in them and wait patiently by executing things that are favorable for that instruction to to unfold, then really miracles happen. We see the same thing in all our acharyas, especially in the life of Srila Prabhupada. Kind of his whole life is exemplified with this unflinching faith in the instruction of his spiritual master, and then patiently waiting until those instructions were fulfilled. If you read Lilamrit, I'm sure many times we cannot avoid shedding tears for the kind of patience he exhibited, both when he was in India and when he was traveling by the cargo ship, and again when he went to US. At every point of time, he never let go of his faith, and he always executed that patience, unlimited patience. So this is a magical equation in bhakti: having faith and to be patient till the right time comes. So this is what even Devahuti exemplified through her life. She always kept that unflinching faith in the words of great souls, and she waited patiently till the right time. Yeah. So when she approaches Kapila Dev and she asks that please tell me, and she asks very intelligent and good questions. Yeah. So first, she tells her son that we all like generally we call our children, "You're the apple of my eye," right? So but then Devahuti approaches Kapila Dev and she says, "My dear son, you're like my transcendental eye, not the apple of the eye, but then you're my transcendental eye." Why she said transcendental eye? Because with a normal eye we see the material world, but with the transcendental eye you get the spiritual vision to see the things as they are. That's why we recite Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. You're praying to the spiritual master to anoint the eye with transcendental knowledge. So that is transcendental eye. Transcendental eye is that eye that is anointed with true knowledge, which makes the disciple or the soul that is surrendered to the knowledge see the things as they are in their true reality. So she calls her son, you're my transcendental eye, so kindly enlighten me. And she says that your teachings are like the sun rays that dissipate the darkness of ignorance. She says that your teachings are like the axe that cut the roots of the material tree. So in all these choicest of words, she glorifies her own son. So this is a very apt way of approaching knowledge, transcendental knowledge especially. Many a times the truths of transcendental knowledge are very difficult to penetrate into our hearts, because in our hearts we have a lot of layers of thickness which do not let certain transcendental truths to enter into our heart, because they're like wall. We have the ego and self-centeredness, etc., etc. But when we develop genuine appreciation through a respect and glorification of the authority from whom we are receiving knowledge, the truths really enter our heart, and they really have the potency to transform our hearts. We see this example in every conversation in Bhagavatam, be it Shukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, the inquiry, the mood of inquiry. Then the how Sutta Goswami and the Shaunak Rishi. Every time, any conversation, it first starts with the glorification of the speaker. And then Maitreya and Vidura, again, it starts with glorification. So any conversation, it always starts with the genuine glorification, giving due respects to the speaker. That's when the knowledge enters straight into our heart. So this is how even Devahuti approached her own son, who is, son is your child, but still she's seeing him in his true original nature. So after this glorification, with her heart totally opened, her and fertile to receive the seed of knowledge, she approaches Kardama Muni and she questions. What's the first question she asks? She tells Kapila Dev, "My dear son, I'm tired of this material happiness." Prabhupada actually writes in the purport that this is the qualification to actually understand spiritual truths. If you remember, like the title of our topic today is the U-turn for everlasting happiness. This U-turn comes exactly when we have that feeling, that tiredness with material happiness, and then we are seeking for a higher truth, the higher nature of happiness. Like the nature of the living soul is Anandamayo Bhyashat. You're genuinely seeking pleasure, but where to really seek it? So when those inquiries start, Athato Brahma Jigyasa, that is when really our human life has started, and that is when the U-turn starts, the U-turn to everlasting happiness. Why I said U-turn is because it's generally we experience this. We go out on a long holiday to places, or let's say a long drive. We go and have some enjoyment outside and all. But still, again, after a long drive and all, what do we look for? We want to just take a U-turn and come back home. Because at home we have love, we have the belongingness, we have relationships. So we really want to take that U-turn. We cannot go really too long. So even in our journey in this body, it's, this feeling of dissatisfaction is good, but it should not lead to depression. It should lead to inquiry. When it leads to inquiry, that is when our good fortune opens up. Inquiry from the right person. That's when our U-turn starts. So she asked pertinent questions. She asked her son, Kapila Dev, that, my dear son, what is the, she asked, what's the relationship between Purusha and Prakriti? And what's the relationship between matter and spirit? That's her first question. Basically, her question points to attachments. So, Kapila Dev begins answering her questions by telling her where to actually repose that attachment. Because being a woman, Devahuti, always for women, the struggle is attachment to family members, attachment to our kin and kith, attachments to various things. That's a major obstacle. So the first thing he addresses is attachment. And what he tells about attachment, he does not say overcome the attachment. He said repose the attachment in the right place. Repose the attachment towards the right person. Who's the right person? The right person is sadhu. When you have attachment to a sadhu, the very same attachment, propensity for attachment becomes a blessing. So we see this in the life of so many of disciples of Srila Prabhupada, what attachment they had. And it was such a boon. That attachment has actually taken them back to Godhead. So that attachment is good when it is directed to the right person. So he says being attached to the right person. Who is the right person? A sadhu. How to know who is a sadhu? So Kapila Dev also gives beautiful description of sadhu. What are the qualities of a sadhu? Titikshava, Karunika, Suhrida, Sarvadehinam. Then Ajata Shatrava Shanta, Sadhava Sadhubhushana. Titikshava means tolerant. Karunika, they're merciful. Suhrida, they're very well-wishing. And he gave so many qualities. This is how they are. And when you associate with them or when you are attached to them, then the whole equation of material life changes. So we also see this, how important is association of devotees. And that's why in our own technical terms, the ABCD of devotional life. A is for association. First comes association. It's one great saint says, even if you don't do anything in your spiritual life, just go and sit in the association of devotees and they will take you where you have to go. It's that powerful association is. It's the very beginning of spiritual life and it's the very essence of spiritual life. In fact, Srila Prabhupada says that if a person is thinking that they can make spiritual advancement without the association of devotees, they are insane. Insane means they're just gone mad. It's that impossible. But association of devotees is really very important. But how do we associate with devotees? That's the next most important question. Because oftentimes in the association of devotees also we tend to bring in our previous material backgrounds and it can cause a lot of trauma and turmoil. Nectar of Devotion explains that association of devotees is like a mirror. Whatever you are going through in your heart, the mirror reflects. Like for example, in your heart, you're cultivating very serious desire for good sadhana, etc. When you go into the association of devotees, you look for that inspiration. But in your heart, in the heart of the heart, if you're developing some negative qualities of, let's say, fault finding or jealousy or etc., when we go to devotees association, that's what we actually, it's a mirror, it reflects. That's what we find. So associating with devotees is very, very beneficial. But then the art of associating with devotees is very crucial. In fact, Maharaj says that it might take a whole lifetime to actually learn how to associate with devotees, but it's worth it. It's really worth it. It's a learning. It's really a learning. It's a great learning. And it really opens the greatest fortune for us. So at least we should know what to do in the association of devotees. So in the association of devotees, what do we speak? Krishna speaks beautifully in the Chatushloki of Bhagavad Gita. Matchitta madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayantasya mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Bodhayanta parasparam, they enlighten each other. Yesterday we were having such a beautiful discussion in our WhatsApp group about the heart's inspiration of different devotees. I felt so really enlightened when I heard from them, and it was really so good to have such a group for discussion where we enlighten each other. It's such a benediction of the Lord. And I really pray that we continue this Bodhiyanta Parasparam. So yeah, so that's so first Kapildev speaks about the association of devotees, how transferring your attachment to sadhus. Then he speaks about how to engage in devotional service, because there are two aspects: individual purity and collective unity. Collective unity is the association of devotees, but to be really a part of association, to really contribute something to that association, what's important is individual purity. We should have our own fixed devotional practices and desire for bhakti. So that comes, so next thing that Kapila Dev explains is how to engage in the devotional service. So the conversation goes on and on. Then Kapila Dev then speaks about the Sankhya philosophy, the very purpose why he has descended. Sankhya, yeah. Whenever the word Sankhya philosophy comes, then generally most devotees and most Matajis is like, no, this is not my stuff. I don't like much of philosophy. I cannot really take it. It's too much for me. But I really love all the rasa stuff. But then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that one should not be lazy to understand Siddhanta. It's very important to understand Tattva, the Sankhya philosophy, etc. Why? I'll tell you a very nice, a small story. You see, there's a small girl, she's been watering a tree every day. Yeah, she's watering the tree every day and she's pouring the water on the mud. Hari Bol. Ananga Sundari Mataji wrote, I love philosophy. Jai, Jai. So this girl is watering at the mud, she's pouring water every day. So when she was pouring water every day, what happens is somebody came and told her, the tree, the leaves, the fruits, everything are up above. Why are you pouring water in the mud? Then she says, no, my mother, my father, everybody have been doing that. So I'm also doing the same thing. And again, second time somebody comes and says, Arey, why are you pouring water on the ground? The leaves and fruits are on the top. Why are you not pouring on top? Then she again says, Arey, why this person is coming and asking me like this? Then she says, no, I've been doing this for long. I will continue to do the same way. And again, the third, fourth, fifth, sixth times somebody comes and tells the same thing. The leaves are on top, so please pour the water on top. So this girl, she gets confused. Maybe what I'm doing is not right. Yes, what they're speaking maybe is true. I have to start watering the leaves and the fruits. Then she starts watering the leaves and the fruits. Because she did not know the anatomy of a tree. There is another girl who knew the anatomy of the tree. She knew that the tree has roots below the ground. And when I pour the water goes down to the roots. The root absorbs the water and the same water is transferred to the trunk and to the trees. So to know this, it is important to have the knowledge of the anatomy of the tree. Without this knowledge, if somebody comes and once you know this knowledge, once you're fixed in this knowledge, somebody comes and tells you why you're pouring water on the ground, you can tell them, because the roots are down. I cannot see them, but they exist. And this is a mechanism how it works. This is exactly the importance of philosophy in our life. Unless we know the details, the Sankhya of the philosophy and truth, we cannot become really fixed up. And somebody comes and says some distractions in the form of, let's say, enjoyment, or in the form of some misery, or in the form of some mental disturbances, we easily give up because we have not really understood the nature, the power of devotional life, or the Atma Tattva, or the Jiva Tattva, or the nature of the absolute truth. We have not understood certain. That's why it's very important that how much ever it permits, a page a day, we should be in touch with the philosophy, because it helps us to give the strength, to get the strength. So that's Sankhya. So actually, Kapila Dev explains so much about Sankhya, the 24 elements, and the 25th element being time. He goes into a lot of details. But before that, yeah, this is the 24 material elements. The gross elements, there are the 5 gross elements, the 5 subtle elements, then there are knowledge acquiring senses, there are jnanendriyas, karmendriyas, and there is mind, intelligence, false ego, and pradhana. These are 4. All these are 24 together, and the 25th element is the time. And this beautiful picture that you're seeing, I've got it from the BTG magazine of 1975. The title of this particular thing is Know the World Around You. It's a nice article. If somebody gets to read, it's a very interesting read. You can read. BTG of February 1975, long back. So explains all this Sankhya. And Devahuti then asks an interesting question, an intelligent question. Now comes again the turning point. She heard everything about the Sankhya, about the philosophy. And she asked one intelligent question. What is that intelligent? Of course, I mean, after explaining about all these 24 material elements, also Kapila Dev also explains about the 3 modes of material nature and how this entire everything is carried over by the interaction of the 3 modes, and how it is so difficult to overcome the 3 modes. So, okay, Devahuti hears about all this and she asks a good question. What is that intelligent question? So basically, they say, right, what is doubt? Doubt is a sign of intelligence. Especially, Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, Mrityu sarva haraschaham udbhavascha bhavishyatam kirti sri vakchanarinam smritir medha dhritikshama. Kirti, that fame, Shrir, that is wealth, Chanarinam, of women, Smriti, the memory, Medha, intelligence, Dhriti, steadfastness, and Kshama, patience. All these qualities of women, my dear Arjuna, it's me. You know, this is the Vibhuti Yoga of Bhagavad Gita, wherein Krishna tells all these opulences of women, Kirti, Shri, Vak, the fine speech of women, all these opulences, know them to be me. So in that he also states, Smritir Medha, the memory, the intelligence is also me. So Devahuti, with all that intelligence, she used the intelligence for the right purpose of actually asking the right question. And she asks Kapila Dev that, my dear son, that you have told so much about the Sankhya, about the material nature, but it seems to be that the matter and the spirit, they seem to be so interconnected that they don't seem to exist without each other. And the modes of material nature are so difficult to overcome. How can I overcome this? Because apparently everything is performed by the 3 modes, and the jiva is just a passive performer. Yeah, we have this beautiful verse in Bhagavad Gita, right? Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasaha ahamkara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. There is gunai karmani, the 3 modes of material. We have this beautiful picture in Bhagavad Gita. If you have seen, there are 3 modes that, you know, we're all puppets in the hands of the 3 modes. They'll be moving like this and we'll be moving. And vimudhatma, ahankara vimudhatma, that is, the foolish people think that I am the doer. While in reality, the 3 modes are actually making us do different things. So if we are such, so Devahuti's question is, from such a passive person whose life is just carried by the three modes. From that kind of a situation, how do I get freedom? So after the hearing about all these 24 elements and the gross elements, the subtle elements, the senses, mind, even Kapilidev explains about Pradhana. He tells about the nature of this universe. This universe is, each universe is like in the shape of an egg. And in that egg, the how much ever is it is covered by 10 layers. And each layer is 10 times more thicker than the previous layer. And it has layers of water, fire, air, ether, and so on, like that 10 layers. Like for example, the water layer is 10 times more thicker than the diameter of the whole universe. It's mind-boggling to understand actually how where we are right now, how far away from the spiritual world we are stuck. So see, hearing all this, Devahuti was like, can we ever be relieved from this situation where we are caught up? It's like we are associating with this matter from time immemorial. We might very theoretically understand that I'm not this body, but to actually realize that, to live in that spirit and to actually get relieved of this material body and these material elements and get back to our true nature, is it possible? So that's her inquiry. So Srila Prabhupada in the commentary, he writes very beautifully that this is an intelligent question that Devahuti asks, because her question is pointing towards surrender to the Supreme Lord and a helplessness in the current state. So even in our condition, when our inquiries are going towards our helpless, understanding our helpless condition and taking shelter of the Supreme Lord, that's a real fructification of our intelligence. In simple words, the real intelligence to be completely dependent on Krishna. So then Kapila he was very pleased with her questions, and he starts explaining about the glory of devotional service and how to execute devotional service. That is, we have this exemplary verse in Bhagavad Gita at Daivihesha Gunamayi Mamamaya Duratyaya Mameva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. That is, this Daiviyesha Gunamayi, the three modes of material nature, O Arjuna, they are impossible to overcome. Duratyaya, we cannot overcome. One cannot overcome. Mameva ye prapadyante. Only by surrender unto me, you will be able to overcome these three modes. So that such whom we see here, the personification of that surrender, I think everybody can guess. It's Draupadi, whom we're seeing as a personification of surrender. That's the only way. That's the only way. We hear about the whole, where we are at. We understand it through our intelligence or inquiry. That's important. But the most important is to know how to get over it. So Kapila beautifully explains about the glory of devotional service and also how to execute the devotional service. He explains about how, in the sense of how to keep the mind situated in a very focused way, and etc. etc. So he tells about how to execute bhakti, and then Devahuti being very, she feels herself very fortunate to receive all these inputs from, these are about 5 to 6 chapters in the last 5 to 6 chapters of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's very vast, but I just shared with you some basic elements and principles from what is there. And again, then Devahuti questions Kapila Dev after hearing about the glories of devotional service. She asks him, my dear Lord, this whole universe, like this whole world is suffering actually. So kindly give us knowledge so that we overcome these illusions and go back to Godhead. So she inquires actually on behalf of all the living entities with compassion. So this is the nature of any spiritual person. They just don't think of themselves. It's not just, recently Mataji was writing, it's not just tuning into the WIIFM. What's a WIIFM? This is one channel everybody tunes into. WIIFM is what's in it for me. Anytime, anywhere, if there is something for you, we tune into that very easily. So we're always in this what's in it for me kind of a mode. and we tune into this channel very easily. But then if there are some people who think not just about themselves, not just what's in it for me, but they think on behalf of everybody and think for everybody. These are great souls. This is the same aspect we see in many great souls, like Prahlad Maharaj, when he says that I am not worried about myself, but what about all these people in this universe? They're all going to suffer, and I'm ready to take their sufferings. And this is the nature of great souls. And even we see King Kulashekar Alwar, in his poems, he says, Ascharyametad manushya loke sudam parityajya visham pibanti namani narayana gocharani tyaktyan vavacha kuhaka patanti. He says, Ascharyametad manushya loke. I am just bewildered seeing all these people. Sudham parityajya visham pibanti. They are just leaving the nectar of the holy names of the Lord, and they're drinking the poison of material news. So he's feeling the pain on behalf of all the living entities. So this is the nature of every pure devotee who is devoted to the Lord, and this nature really pleases the Lord so much. That's why they say, to be the instrument of his compassion. That's something that really pleases Krishna so much. That's why in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna ends with saying, Nachatasman manusheshu kaschid me priya krittama bhavishyana cha me tasmat anyat priyataro bhuvi. Who he gives his transcendental knowledge to others is very, very dear to me, and know that there is no one more dear to me. Know that there'll never be anybody more dear to me than this person. So somebody acts on behalf of the Lord and feels compassionate for others and coming out of their comfort zone. They're very, very dear to the Lord. So Kapila is very pleased with these questions of Devahuti, and again he continues and he gives very beautiful answers about many things, about how dangerous is this place. He tells about the difference between a liberated soul and a pure devotee, how the modes of material nature act on each of them. And he tells about the movements of living entities. In that, it's a very beautiful section. In fact, in this section called Movement of Living Entities, there is every detail about how, right from the fertilization of the egg and the sperm, how in each month, in each week, how the fetus develops. So this is amazing. People say that Vedic literature, they don't have faith in Vedic literature, that it's all man-written. So, but this Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, is written eons ago. At that time, there was no scanning machines or anything, but it gives such, if you read the chapter, Movements of Living Entities, it gives amazing description of how the whole fetus looks every month, of which size it is. Very, very amazing. And in fact, it even speaks about how certain souls who remember their past life, in the 10th month, they offer prayers to the Lord, saying that, I do not want to experience this tragedy of birth again. But then, after parturition, that is after birth, they again forget. So we say Janma, Mrityu, Jara Vyadhi, these four are the fourfold miseries. Oftentimes we don't understand how actually birth is a misery. But if you read this chapter, we understand actually how much of pain the living entity goes through in the womb of a mother. So he speaks about all these philosophies, and then he ultimately concludes by how the unmotivated, unconditional, loving, devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the only way a soul is liberated from this material bondage and goes back to Godhead. So Devahuti receives complete knowledge from Kapila Dev, and after which Kapila Dev leaves home and he goes for his further meditation, though he did not know, there was no need for him to meditate. He was setting an example. And what did Devahuti do after receiving all this knowledge? This is the example that we all need to be inspired about. So after receiving all this knowledge, she did not leave home and go to jungles. She was at home, and with what all knowledge she received from Kapila Dev, she became fixed in her consciousness in devotional service about the purpose of life, about the goal of life. And she executed the purpose and goal by staying at home. So much so the kind of pure vibrations that she set forth because of her divine presence and her practices, that after she left her body, the place where she was, that whole place became so sanctified. In fact, it became a sacred pilgrimage. So even in our own lives, we can experience that when we execute the small processes of bhakti, that worshipping Tulasi, then offering diya or flowers to the Lord, and do some chanting, offering bhoga to the Lord, we also have this influence of creating a sacred space around us. And in this way, we benefit our family members so much just by our mere presence. And in fact, that has its effect on the transformation of the other souls who are around us, either directly or indirectly. So that's all for today. This is how Devahuti has lived such a life of example. So in summary, I would just give a quick recap of what we spoke today. We spoke about how Devahuti, how Lord Brahma came, offered his prayers to Kapiladev in the womb of Devahuti, and Devahuti has then given birth to Kapiladev, and Kardama Muni, after offering his prayers, he renounces and he leaves home. And then Devahuti approaches Kapiladev and inquires about higher truths of life. She inquires about what is the difference between the Prakriti and Purusha. She inquires about how to get over the three modes of material nature. And she inquires to give the transcendental knowledge that fixes one in bhakti and how to execute the process of devotional service. And finally, she becomes fixed in the knowledge that has been given to her, and she executes the purpose of life, being fixed in that knowledge, by staying at home, and achieves the ultimate perfection. So this is, and she also tells Kapiladev that the easiest way to approach you and to worship you is by chanting of your holy names. And if a person is chanting the holy names, it is to be understood that they have already finished, they're already done with all their ritualistic performances, Vedic studies, everything is done. That's when they have come to the platform of chanting the holy names. So I'm so fortunate to be in the Sangha of all devotees who chant holy name in such a beautiful way. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.